As we wrap up campaign 2024, the scope of Republican control in Washington over the next few years is coming into focus. Overnight, CBS projected Donald Trump the winner in Arizona, giving him a complete electoral vote sweep of the 7 battleground states. With a final tally of 312 electoral votes, Republicans scored their biggest White House win in 36 years. Republicans will also control the Senate with at least 52 seats, and there are 2 races that have not yet been called by CBS News. Control of the House is still to be determined, with a few contests outstanding, but CBS News rates it as leaning Republican at this point. We begin this morning with what we've learned about the incoming Trump administration, personnel, priorities, and more. We turn now to Robert Costa. Bob, good to have you here. I know you've been speaking to your sources. What will this second term look like?
Great to be with you, Margaret. In recent days, I've spoken to President-elect Trump, called him up on the phone along with his top advisors and allies. And what's notable about this transition is that unlike in 2016, when he was elected as a Washington outsider, now he knows all the players in Washington. And he alone, more than any other aide, is evaluating the personnel and possibilities around him. And he reflected in one of our conversations about how he sees his mandate, that he has a movement and a base and now a party that's fully behind him. And he wants to make sure that anyone who comes on board has his same vision for that mandate and for his perceived level of support. And you've seen in recent days, people around Trump in the wider orbit are trying to recommend a lot of names, but it's Trump himself who's saying to his top aides like Susie Wiles, his incoming chief of staff, that he wants to make sure that this is not a chaotic process and it's reflective of where he wants to go more than any other kind of counsel. And on foreign policy, for example, you see names like Senator Bill Hagerty, Senator Marco Rubio, former Ambassador Rick Grenell, all people who identify with Trump's vision, but those who have had issues with Trump in the past about how he perceives foreign policy, like, for example, former Ambassador Nikki Haley or former Secretary Mike Pompeo, are now out of the process. And it's not because of any personal trouble with Trump, I'm told. It's because at the end of the day, Trump wants to make sure things are moving along smoothly on ideological and policy lines come January.
Do we know what it was with Mike Pompeo, who served him quite loyally for 4 years as CIA director and Secretary of State? Was it his support, for example, of Ukraine?
It's just a different orbit around Trump right now. The president-elect has people like Donald Trump Jr., Elon Musk. He has Steve Bannon on the outside advising him. These are people who are not interventionists. These are people who aren't traditional Republican hawks. That's not to say some hawks won't end up in this administration, or some Wall Street figures might end up in this administration as well. I'm told by my sources that the president-elect is not ruling out mainstream Republicans or more centrist Republicans from joining his team. But at this point, he's moving quickly to make sure his base, his party, and his image is reflected in the personnel picks fully.
What are his priorities for the first 100 days, or is that too traditional a way of thinking about it?
No, they have a real agenda this time. You remember in 2017, it was somewhat sporadic in how they moved and navigated on health care and taxes. They are moving quickly already behind the scenes to expand the Trump tax cuts, to institute sweeping tariffs across the board. They're also going to try to, on foreign policy, begin negotiations with Ukraine and Russia sometime early next year. And you have mass deportations more than anything galvanizing the Trump people behind the scenes. Of course, they know it's going to be controversial. To remove undocumented migrants in a big way across the country could be logistically difficult and politically challenging, but they're moving ahead.
Bob Costa, thank you.